Hey guys, this is Mr. Grice for Algebra 2, Chapter 2.4 Notes, Day 1. Today we're talking about scientific notation. Our learning target today is to be able to write numbers in scientific notation and simplify expressions into scientific notation. Well, I'd be like, yo, Mr. Grice, what is scientific notation form? Well, here we go. It is a number times 10 to another variable, where, here's the key thing, the number is greater than or equal to the absolute value of a and less than the number 10. And n is any integer. Okay, so pretty much a has to be a number greater than 1 and less than 10. Okay, so here are some examples of scientific notation. You could have a number 8.3 times 10 to the negative third. Okay, and here's another example. We could have negative 2 times 10 to the fourth. Okay, either way. And now in decimal form, a decimal form is a number written without exponents. So a number written without exponents. And some two examples of that, we could have 0.489. And another example of that, we could say 2,760,000. Okay, those are both written in decimal form. Now, the first thing we're talking about is writing from scientific notation form into decimal form, aka without exponents. So, if your exponent is positive, we're going to move the decimal to the right. Okay? And if the exponent is negative, we're going to move the exponent to the left. Okay? So, let's take a look. Our first one, what we need to look at is the exponent, okay? And it's positive, so I'm going to move it positive 4, and that's to the right. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And all of those little loops, you have to add a 0, okay? So I add the number 9, and then we add 1, 2, 3, 3 zeros. Okay? A negative, it means I'm going to move negative 3, which is to the left. So I go 1, 2, 3. So I have to add 2 zeros, and then 3, 5, 9. And then we put a 0 in front. Okay? So if it's positive, we move it to the right, and if it's negative, we move it to the left. Okay. So let's zoom in a little bit and get these going. I think mine have a couple different numbers, so I'm just going to change the ones right away. That's a negative 6, and that's a negative 2. Okay, so 2.39, it's positive, and I move it to the right 4 spaces, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So this number is really 23,900. Okay. Number 2, it's positive, so I have to move it to the right 7 numbers. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are my 7 numbers. So that number is really talking about 10,450,000. Number 3. Okay, remember that's a negative, so I have to move it to the left. 1, and then 6 zeros. So So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I write the rest of the numbers. Okay? Number 4, it's negative, so I move it 1, 2. So there's 1, 2, and the rest of the numbers stay the same. Number 5, here's a nice little review of exponents. If your exponent is 0, your base turns into 1. So that's really saying 9.2 times 1, which is 9.2. Okay, and number 6, our exponent is positive. It's a positive 1. I move it 1 spot to the right. So we're really talking about 69.8. All right, the next part. To write numbers in scientific notation is similar. You just need to think backwards, okay? And by thinking backwards, this is what I would definitely write down. Let me highlight it. Okay, so you need to think, where do they have to move the decimal? And you might be like, Mr. Grice, who's they? Well, pretend that you're teaching this to somebody else. Okay? So if I move it one way, they have to move it the opposite. Okay, that's what we mean by backwards. So in our first example, we have 34,000. I need to move it. Here's my decimal right now. I need to move it 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I move it to the left to make it 3.4, they have to move it to the right. So they would move it a positive 4. Okay? Another way to think about it, if it's a really big number, it's going to have a positive exponent. If it's a really tiny number, it's going to have a negative exponent. Okay? So looking at our next example, I have to move it 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers to the right. But when they do it, they have to move it 4 numbers to the left. And that's where the negative 4 comes from. Okay? Let's do a couple of these together, and I'll have you do some on your own. Okay? All right, number 7. Here's my decimal. I need to move it 2 places to the left. They need to move it 2 places to the right. Number 8. I need to move it 2 places to the right to get 6.7, but when they do it, they would need to move it to the left. Okay? Number 9. I need to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I need to move it 6 places to the left. They need to do it 6 places to the right. Okay? Let's do one more together. I need to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have to move it 6 places to the right. They need to move it 6 places to the left. Okay? So why don't you pause the video and try 11 and 12 all on your own. Good luck. Okay, and there are 2 answers. Just remember, when you move it to the left, they have to move it to a right, so it should be a positive. Okay? All right. Sometimes the number might seem to be in scientific notation, but it's not. Look at these examples. So, 13, 14, 15, and 16. It's not about where you move the decimal, but where they have to move it. Okay? So the two things that we need to remember right here. Okay? Two important facts. That if you move it to the right, we need to add. Okay? And if we move it to the left, we need to subtract. Okay? So, for number 10, it's not in proper scientific notation. We have to move it to the left. So, I move it to the left. Where did they have to move it? They have to move it to the right. So we would add 1. Okay? So it's 10 to the 8th. Okay? Number 14, here's the decimal. We have to move it to the left. They have to move it to the right. So that means we're adding 1 to that. So this is 1.2 times 10 to the negative first, because negative 2 plus 1 gives us negative 1. Okay? Number 15. We have to move it to the right. So they have to move it to the left. So that's why we subtract 1. And we get 7.89 times 10 to the second power. Okay? Number 16. I have to move it to the right. They have to move it to the left. So we get 6 times 10 to the negative 2. Okay? All right. Let's try some of these on your own. Okay? So let's look at the directions. It says to write in decimal form. Okay? So remember, if it's positive, you move it to the right. Okay? If it's negative, you move it to the left. I want you to try 1 through 8 first, and then I'll have the answers when you start the video again. Okay? Good luck. Okay, there are the answers 1 through 8. Just remember, if it's negative, it's a smaller number. If it's positive, it's going to be a bigger number than what you started with. Okay? Now, these ones down here, you have to write it in scientific notation. Okay? So, you look at it, I have to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many times do they have to move it? You move it to the right, or I moved it to the right, they have to move it to the, or I moved it to the left, I'm sorry. They have to move it to the right, okay? Same thing with 12. See which direction you have to move it. Okay, I move it to the right. They have to move it to the left, okay? So that gives you 13 through, or 10 through 18. Okay, go ahead and pause the video, and good luck. Okay, and there are your answers, 10 through 18. Now, you need to be very careful on 15, 16, 17, and 18, because those weren't written in proper scientific notation. Okay, so you have to put it in proper scientific notation first. Now, If you need any help with this or you're still having trouble, please find Ms. Carranza or myself. We would love to help you out. Otherwise, that's it for Algebra 2, Chapter 2.4 Notes, Day 1. Thanks for watching.